Welcome to the Burns Perspective. I'm your host, Taylor Burns. Join me as we talk to athletes who are striving to be the best that they can be, coaches who aim to be the coach that they needed when they were younger, and join us as we entertain various topics on holistic athletic development. All right, so today I'm going to be doing just kind of a Q&A with just me. Excited to answer a few questions that were submitted by various athletes that train here at AHP. Got 4 good questions here, and I'm just going to kind of hopefully not ramble too much, but go into depth behind answering some of these questions. So the first one I got was, how does having an understanding of an athlete's breathing affect the exercise selection given? Okay. Now, this is probably what I'm most excited about in the training world, and my own philosophy is, continue to go further down this rabbit hole and developing a deeper understanding of what this person is asking about. Now, their question's a little off, and the reason they're asking about the breathing impacting exercise selection is just because basically you have 2 different archetypes, and the breathing drills themselves are actually the exercises selected. So certain breathing drill could be like akin to selecting a squat. Okay. So what he's really asking is, how does someone's axial skeleton archetype impact my exercise selection? All right. And it's a really important understanding to have when working with athletes, because essentially each of us fall into 2 broad categories. And now, before I go any further, we have to remember that everything is a spectrum, right? So you have folks that are on one end of the spectrum and another on the opposite end. And then you have people that are going to fall somewhere in the middle, okay? So essentially, when we talk about the axial skeleton, we're talking about the spine, the thorax, and the pelvis. And you kind of have 2 different categories. You have your wide infrasternal angle and you have your narrow infrasternal angle, okay? And this impacts the positions that they can and can't get into, and maybe the loss of movement or loss of movement variability in certain directions. And so understanding where someone falls on that spectrum kind of gives us a general guideline, and that's probably the most important thing. It's just one measure. It's just one piece of the puzzle, albeit a pretty big piece of the puzzle. It's a general guideline for us to target certain areas in terms of exercise selection. So this bleeds into how we breathe, different mobility drills, and then on down to our strength training exercises, our core work, you name it. Because, basically, when you think of healthy movement, and we're in the movement business, we're trying to get people to move better. If we want to throw a baseball harder, skate faster, jump higher, all that stuff, we need to be elite at moving, all right? And healthy movement, that's the other piece. We've got to stay healthy. And so healthy movement is obviously a really broad, how do you answer what healthy movement is? And I'll attempt to. I think it's just normal relative motion between joints, okay? So when you think about this, the infrasternal angle and the 2 spectrums, so wide versus narrow, you're going to have, essentially 2 very different people in how they've maybe created compensation patterns. And then we're trying to attack that compensation and make them a better and healthier mover, because we have to respect variability. The sport, any sport, it's chaotic. We need to prepare our athletes to be able to handle that. And ultimately, the longer I do this, everything that we're doing as strength and conditioning coaches, it's about handling forces, okay? And without getting too long-winded, the different skeletal archetypes, they're going to handle forces in a different way in terms of how they manage pressure, like fluid pressure and movement and all that stuff between joints. So I hope that kind of answers your question. If you're interested, shoot me a message, and I'd love to send. Obviously, it's an incredibly broad topic, and there's a lot to it, and it's difficult to answer in 5 minutes. But I hope I've kind of answered, why does, someone's skeleton and how they breathe, how does that change the exercises that I give? Okay. Yeah. Second question. All right. Why is a young athlete's nutrition so important? This is a great question. It's simple and it's to the point, but it's huge. We know that nutrition is so important, and I think we'll define young as, say, a teenager for the sake of today's podcast. I think first and foremost, like, I'm not going to go into the explain why you need to eat protein and why we need to be hydrated. That would be too long. I think the direction I'm going to take is, we know unequivocally that if you want to get faster, stronger, if you want to feel better, move better, all that stuff, we know that how we fuel our bodies is vital. Okay. And I think I'll say two big reasons beyond just to make physical improvements. We need to eat to fuel our training and help us reach our goals or optimize our training. Really, that's what nutrition is can we help to optimize the work that we're putting in a training setting. But for young athletes, I think first and foremost, it's really about, with everything, not just nutrition, it's about building habits and giving them a really strong and deep foundation to eventually reach their goals. And nutrition is such a big piece. And if we can start, taking care of that piece of the puzzle at 15, 16 and start developing those habits, hopefully by the time they're 20 or 21, they'll be, even more advanced and their nutrition will be really locked in, and they'll have that bedrock of, habits where they're eating properly and eating to fuel rather than eating to fill their bodies, and able to, have good habits with meal prep and making good choices and all that stuff. And then secondly, honestly, if you're in a competitive sport and you have goals, you're in the business, you're in, it's competitive. There are a lot of other athletes just like you that are really talented, that are vying for scholarships, and every level you go up, the competition gets greater. And the reality is, a lot of teenagers and really a lot of college athletes, they don't eat very well at all. So if you're looking for a leg up, a way to gain an advantage on your competition as a teenager, if you can hone in your nutrition, you're gonna have a supreme advantage over your competition, probably, if you can really lock that in. So that's why, in my opinion, helping our young athletes eat better and develop good nutrition habits is so important. Okay, winding along here. If you're still with us and you're not tired of my voice yet. The third question, this comes from one of our baseball athletes. Does the arm care we do prepare us to throw harder or to be able to pitch longer? Now, I think that it's a good question, and I need to go a couple different directions with it. So the answer is yes to both, ideally. Okay, but really our arm care, how we do things, our philosophy here, there's a few things. Number one is, I kind of going back to question number one, the number one priority is to create good, clean movement and develop good habits arthrokinematically in terms of how's the scap moving, how's the entire complex, joint by joint interacting as we move our arm up overhead and doing what we need to do, because those habits are going to show up when how we throw the baseball. So every single rep we do from an arm care perspective, whether it's a trap raise or a rhythmic stabilization or an ER hold or whatever, we want optimal movement. And if we can get that good optimal movement when we're doing those drills, we're creating a framework and a habit for the same movement to occur when we go up overhead and go into layback when we throw the baseball. Okay. So yeah, we need, and rotator cuff strength, that's a vital component to increasing velocity. Something I tell my athletes all the time is you're only as strong as your weakest link. And we got to have a really strong external cuff. We've got to have, strength through our low traps, and we've got to have good stability, everywhere. So that, and what I will say is all of our hardest throwers, when I do their ER holds, they're way stronger than our younger guys, or the guys that throw 85, 86, their external strength into their rotator cuff is not nearly as strong as our elite guys that can throw the ball 95, 96. Now that's a little bit of a cycle that in order to throw hard, you're actually training rotator cuff strength. But I tell kids, like, hey, we got to jack up our deadlift, our lunge, all that stuff. We got to get our rotator cuff strong in order to throw hard too. And more importantly, it's to prepare ourselves to handle throwing hard. And getting into the last part of the question, the stamina piece, endurance, being able to pitch longer, it matters a lot too. And so talking about the endurance piece, one of the reasons we don't do like arm care till failure is we're kind of getting into the arthrokinematics of it. So we want to make sure we're working the little muscles when we do arm care. So the external cuff, the external rotators, your teres minor and your infraspinatus, and then the low traps. Now, if I do, so that's why we don't like a ton of shoddy band work. You do a billion external rotation J bands and stuff, and now you're just ingraining those bad habits. And also, now you're fatiguing the rotator cuff. That's your smallest muscle, and now you're no longer actually training the cuff. And guess what? Lat, upper trap, pec major is going to take over, and now they are you're creating bad habits, and B, you're not even getting the little guys stronger anymore. So that's our arm care. Really, that's why we don't do it till failure or too much into fatigue, because we just create bad habits. So then, well, how do we pitch longer into games? And really simply, we're just going to get into specificity of training. The best way to build up throwing endurance, if you will, and I don't love that term endurance, is to throw more and throw longer into the games. The most functional activity is going to be pitching and working up our pitch count and our workload, both from an acute standpoint in terms of like how many pitches can we throw in one game, and also our ability to bounce back. Can we make a start, once a week? Can we throw to the pen a couple times a week? And that needs to be built up over time, and it's both a very general and specific quality. Okay, so I hope that answers your question there on kind of why we do arm care the way that we do. Lastly, this is an interesting one. When I got it, I wasn't really sure how to answer it. I'm not really sure I know how to answer it now. The question was simply, can you talk about how to improve your perseverance? It's a good question. I wish I think, whoever has that answer probably can make a lot of money. I think for me, perseverance is, it's the ability to, I'm blanking on the quote I want to say, but I think it's like the ability to go from failure to failure without losing your enthusiasm. I can't remember who said that. But I think that's what it is. And I think, so I think really your question is, well, how do you do that? How can you how can you deal with adversity and have setbacks and fail and just keep coming back with enthusiasm and continue to work and continue to strive for what you want to strive for? And to me, it comes down to having a big enough why. Why are you doing this? So, why are you pursuing this career? Or why are you trying to get a scholarship to play hockey or baseball at the next level? And if it's deep enough and you want it bad enough, then that is how you can continue to persevere. But it's not as simple as that. You need to create strategies so that in my opinion, you're surrounded by your why. Because when times are tough and you're really dejected, you'll forget it. And it can be really difficult. And so you need to, with our athletes, I really encourage them, to make a goal sheet and make it big. Dream big, have big, massive goals and go for it. But then you need to have it in front of you all the time. If you are going to take the time to create goals, whatever they might be, whether it's in sport or life, you need to have it and you should see it every single day. You should be able to recite your goals. If you don't know why, it's going to be really, why am I getting up at 5 a.m. to go to the gym? I don't know. You need to know, I am going there because I'm trying to get a scholarship because I want to prove to everybody that thought I couldn't do it that I'm going to do it. Or, I'm getting up at 5 a.m. I'm going to go back to school as a 40-year-old because I want to be able to earn more money to give my kids a better life, and I want to be able to pay their college, whatever it might be, right? You have to decide, and it has to be big, and it has to be motivating enough in those dark times when you're not going to feel like doing what you know you need to do. So for me, that's what it is. And you can get a little crazy with it. Like, I used to put sticky notes on every doorknob in my house. Just like, when I first started the business and I was in debt, it was like debt-free, new facility, and it was everywhere, right? And it was just constant. It was on my steering wheel. It was everywhere. When I was young, I had when I was in high school and early college, I had a baseball that I carried with me everywhere. It was in my cup holder, and it just had 90 miles an hour written on a Sharpie. And I was just never not with that baseball. So for me, you want to improve your perseverance, and I do think perseverance is a skill. It comes down to sitting down and establishing your why and constantly reminding yourself of it. Okay, so I'm not sure how many of these Q&As I'll do. We'll see how successful it was. I don't know how many people will enjoy listening to me just kind of drone on and on for 15 minutes, but I really hope you took something out of today, and looking forward to the next episode. That's a wrap on today's episode of The Burns Perspective. I hope you enjoyed it. Please check us out on our various social media channels and feel free to reach out with any questions or comments relating to today's episode.